Welcome everybody to another episode of reaction videos, and in this case, I'm doing reaction videos to Tupac and a variety of rappers. But I'm on a Tupac roll. I think because one, I actually like, I should say this. I like enmeshing myself in an artist. So understanding rap is a challenge, and because there's things like mumble rap today, for instance, and there's things that they're play on rap, or is it really rap, or what exactly is constitutes rap, what's good rap, what's mediocre rap, what's bad rap, right? So it's just so much. When I study literature, poetry, for instance, so right now on my channel I'm doing a lot of poetry on William Wordsworth, William Blake, and the Romantics, but I'm specifically focusing on Blake and Wordsworth at the moment. And I really enjoy experiencing a broad swath of a body of work that an artist creates to say, I like these things, I don't like these things, this is a good quality of him, I don't agree with these things. And it just helps to get an artist. And I think that's an important thing that we miss today, is especially in our day and age of, I love technology, but I think the, iTunes, like getting a single song at a time, and we're not getting, so we hear disconnected little snippets of a person's view and not the full symphony of their thought or their work of art in the term of, in their music, for instance. So I'm enjoying this and meshing myself in Tupac. And today I'm going to read, so we're going to do the poem. This, I got a good comment here from Michael Couture. Let me cover my face for a second, but just discovering your channel, and I really appreciate the style of your reactions. As a Tupac, I didn't do a good job of copying this, but as a Tupac fan, it's interesting and refreshing to see reactions to his music that are rooted in language. That's a good point. But his recommendation was Me Against the World, Still I Rise, Teardrops and Closed Caskets, and Hold Your Head. So I chose for now Still I Rise, and there's a few more that I could do. So thank you, Michael Couture. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. And what he's mentioning about the rooted in language aspect is really important, because one thing I want to say is that, I've said this on many other of the episodes I've done of reactions, is that, my expertise, or my, calling myself an expert, it's kind of not true, I guess, but my passion and the thing I've been studying for years and years is classic literature, from world literature, really. But particularly English, but I've done some French and some Spanish and a lot of ancient Greek. And there is a difference between music and poetry. And so it's not 100% fair to Tupac for me to be someone who is more rooted in language, evaluating him. Now, his book of poetry, which he didn't publish, I think it was published posthumously. And, so it's not fair even here to judge him too much, because I don't think it's fair to like go into an artist's, closet, find some stuff that they were kind of working on for fun, and then say, well, this isn't good or bad. Like, it's what they published and created for public consumption that you should judge a person on. Anyway, get off my soapbox there. And, same thing with the music though. So it's to some degree, it's not fair for, when you hear me say, oh, I'm not sure if I like that, which, I like a lot of the Tupac stuff, but there's stuff I don't like. And but again, it's not fair because I'm not a musical person at all. Definitely not a musical person. And, I like music, but I don't know anything about it. I have no talent or knowledge or expertise in it. So I'm purely looking at the, when I come up with stuff, I'm trying to come up with it based on the language. And a lot of times I'm, going to fail. It's not going to do a good job, because music is a fundamental. And what Michael Couture is pointing out, thank you for, he's talking about, he's appreciating the rooted in language aspect. That's great. And that's what I'm going to try and offer as much as possible. But that's not Tupac. Tupac, he does poetry, but it is rap and there is music. And one thing that separates pure poetry that you'll read in, throughout all of history and rap is that the fundamental of poetry, one basic idea, is that it's a sound and sense, or sound and meaning of words. So it's the words that are coming up with all the sound and the meter and the rhythm and the rhyme. And with music or rap, you have a beat. You don't have that when you're reading Emily Dickinson, when you're reading Lord Byron or Tennyson. It's just primarily the words that give it the music, or, you know, the sound of the words. Okay, that was a long rant. I apologize. So before we get into the video, let me read this poem. I've been reading one poem from his book that was published, I believe, posthumously, The Rose That Grew from Concrete. Now, I've never read this poem. I'm not choosing this to coincide with the song that I'm going to listen to today. And it's just, you know, happens to be what this is. And today's poem is Life Through My Eyes by Tupac. Life through my bloodshot eyes would scare a square to death. Poverty, murder, violence, and never a moment to rest. Fun and games are few, but treasured like gold to me. 'Cause I realize that I must return to my spot in poverty. But mock my words when I say my heart will not exist unless my destiny comes through and puts an end to all of this. This, I think, is the best poem I've read so far in this. Yeah, so the idea of life through his bloodshot eyes, the things that he's experienced, would scare a square, like me, I suppose, to death. Hopefully it's not true, but hopefully I can understand something of what he's going through, but maybe he's right. I don't know. Poverty, murder, violence. I've never experienced either of those. I mean, a little bit of violence, but not on level with him. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I hope to express today after I listen to this, because I saw the title, Still I Rise, and I know that that's a famous Maya Angelou poem. So depending on the time, I'd like to read that poem afterwards and talk a little bit about the power of literature and how it can speak to us and why it's so important. Okay, but you came for a reaction, so let's get a reaction. I found these lyrics online. I really hope that this artist or this YouTube creator did the whole song, because sometimes they seem to not do that.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Not sure what he's saying. 96 big sitting on chrome.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Bodies sitting on chrome? Sound really bad.
Big body sitting on chrome.
They always have great
96 big body sitting on chrome.
beats though, of course.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
You can't help but tap your foot, no matter who you are.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Somebody wake me, I'm dreaming. I started as a seed, the semen, swimming upstream, planted in the womb while streaming. On the top was my pops, my mama screaming stop from a single drop. This is what they got, not to disrespect my peoples, but my papa was a loser. Only plan he had for mama was the fucker and abuser. Even as a little seed, I could see his plan for me. Stranded on welfare, another broken family. Now what was I to be? The product of this heated passion. Mama got pregnant and Papa got a piece of ass. Look how it began. Nobody gave a fuck about me. Pistol in my hand. This cruel world can do without me. How can I survive? Got me asking white Jesus, will a nigga live or die? Cause the Lord can't see us in the deep dark clouds of the projects. Ain't no sunshine, no sunny days. And
By the way, when he says like, and you know, he's talking about piece of ass and stuff, it is interesting because like listening to his other songs, he talks about his own behavior doing this same activity. What the hell am I talking about?
we only play sometimes when everybody's sleeping. I open my window, jump to the streets and get to creeping. I can live or die, hope I get some money before I'm gone. I'm only 19, I'm trying to hustle on my own. On this block where everybody and they pops trying to slang rocks. Rather go to college, but this is where the game stops. Don't
You did go to college,
cause it's
right?
all its own. From dust to dawn, you can buy rocks, clocks, or a herringbone. You can ask my man, he's a mind reader. Keep my 9 heater all the time, this is how we grind. Meet up at the cemetery, then get smoked out. Pass the weed, nigga. Now Hennessy will keep the key. Everywhere I go, niggas holler at me. Keep it real, G. And my reply till they kill me. Act up if you feel me. I was born not to make it, but I did. The tribulations of a ghetto kid, still I rise.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Still I rise.
I hate when he says that, like I was born not to make it, but I did.
Always,
so sad.
Bricks with blicks, do your project always, dumping crews like twos. Nigga, all day secrets of war, prepare me for the worst. A life that's lavish, full of cabbage, or a life that's in the hearse. But now my dreams, it seems though, be placing triple beams and things, bro. Diamond pinky rings got the loop popping out my jeans. Dynamically, this dude will twist your shit ceramically. Able to write a fatal verse with no profanity. It's on for algae, Nico Storm and nasty. New, I put a hole in your crew trying to pass me with no remorse. You get blasted full force. A Nike endorsement doing shootings on a horse. Worldwide supremacy, all y'all remember me. Hungover from Hennessy with a menacing tendency. Police be clocking me, so I be dipping, slipping sloppily. Sipping vodka, be and ditching clips on private property. When 5 be coming, niggas be running for their life and freedom. The type to beat them, hitting gates and breaking, trying to lead them to pit terriers. Montclair getting scarier. They non-state shoot them in secluded areas to bury it, not me. I burn them off the dick, staying scot-free. Till Taz harass my ass and try to have the ad floppy. My nigga fell, giving the whole Essex County trigger hell. Running the fucking block and ducking cops trying to get up in 96, my gloss, my plastic passion for blasting bastards. No faces for open caskets, peeling your cat backwards. Your cowards ain't prepared for pistol practice. I send my missiles through your mattress, leaving holes in your body like a cactus. While me and my crew be bopping, more green's the topic, and loot to keep the seams in my motherfucking jeans popping. Leaving your spleen to pick up. Half of you niggas is softer than a snicker. Let's go to war and see who draw quicker. And still I rise. And still I
96
rise.
big body sitting on chrome.
And still I
Oh,
rise.
96.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
I have no idea what that means.
Still come up.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Someone explain.
Call y'all.
96 big body
Y'all
sitting
can
on
talk
chrome.
real
96
shit.
big body sitting on chrome.
I assume chrome
Y'all
wheels.
niggas
96
fake
big body sitting on chrome.
So white.
all day, every day.
96 big body sitting on
Now I
chrome.
got rollerblade. Big,
96 big body sitting on chrome.
thought you knew.
96 big body sitting on
I'm
chrome.
out this bitch.
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Come on,
Is
Pop.
that like a car?
96 big body sitting on chrome.
Fuck out here, Pop.
96 big body
Got
sitting
the
on
whole way
chrome.
out.
Kind of unsettling little
said?
boy.
96
Said
big
we got
body
the
sitting
whole
on
way
chrome.
outside.
Wow. All right. That was an experience. Yeah, so I don't understand exactly what happened. That was a lot of lyrics. It's definitely something, it's hard to have a first reaction to that and to kind of keep it in your head. But that, so this is something that rap does, really well with the lyrics. Cause I know, the culture of like, you're supposed to listen to, as far as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not, no music is really meant to be heard once, but this is definitely the kind of music that you need to listen to it again and again and again and again to really get it. And I can imagine, like, if you're just listening to it, with like, a Walkman back in the day or something, right? Like that would even be more challenging because you don't see the lyrics. And if I recall, like, and I wasn't a big music person, but I think CDs back in the 90s used to have lyrics in the CD, like in the back, you'd open it up and there'd be like a piece of paper there. I remember like I got an Eminem CD and I'm pretty sure like one of the early LPs, and that was like that. So I think that was a common thing. And, with a lot of folk music from the 60s and 70s, you don't really need the lyrics, right? Like it's very repetitive. It's so simple. You don't really, it's like got one quatrain, one refrain, and it's got a couple of just verses, and then it's got its, kick, and then it's done. Of course, you get like bigger albums and then you get rock albums and things that might be more, I guess. But anyway, so, rap is its own unique culture, and it's interesting to learn about it. And it's because again, I could not fathom understanding, like a lot of what he's saying, especially when we had that other individual, I don't know his name, who was rapping, and there's certain slang and certain words in there that are meant for, it's kind of like the for us, by us type thing. It's like it's not meant for someone like me who doesn't really know, or who maybe didn't live that experience and so is unaware. And then there's a kind of spreading of that culture to friends of mine who were in the same neighborhood in Black, but they understood and I didn't. And so it's a weird separation. And then of course there's like a lot of white people who understood it too, right? And they just got it for whatever reason, or they got in on the slang and understanding that particular vernacular. So it's really fascinating to, as an older person now, learning about this. And even though I kind of heard it back in the 90s vaguely in the background, to kind of understand it. And before you guys go, I hope you'll give me 1 minute here, or 2 or 3 or whatever, but hopefully not too long, to read to you this poem by Maya Angelou, Still I Rise. Let me get this bigger on the screen for you. Now, I've read this a couple times. I'm not an expert on it, and it's not exactly the same thing, I assume, from what Tupac is talking about. There is a kind of aspect with the Tupac song in terms of rising against the challenges of his upbringing, of course. So the Tupac Still I Rise is very much, it starts, it's kind of like a birth to death song. It starts with him as, his father's seaman, essentially. And, from the relationship he had with his father's mother, and how she was just a piece of ass. And then he was a loser. And, Tupac grew up in a ghetto without a father. And then he, had lots of hard times. And of course, people tried to kill him. And he was only 19 when he's as the narrator of the song. And, it's this harsh world, but still he rises. He's going to, do whatever it takes, including sell drugs if necessary to make a living and to survive in a country and in a world that he believes doesn't appreciate or want him. And it's just like, possibly his father didn't want him. At least that's, one interpretation. And so that's, I think, the general gist that I would got. Obviously, there's way more to it than that, but from a first reaction. And like I said, there's this famous poem, which is a book of poetry by Maya Angelou, who was, of course, a great poet, a great American poet, writing in the, post 1960s era of civil rights, and really just a great writer. And I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a wonderful poem. So this is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. That there's a flow that starts in this change of the stanza. What stanza is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. So you notice that this has a normal, this is called a quatrain stanza, 1, 2, 3, 4, which just means it, consists of 4 lines. This is the very typical pattern, but then she breaks it up, right? And whenever you see a poet who knows what they're doing, break it up on purpose, there's a reason. And there's a kind of flow where it feels like it goes, it's all one experience of this. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise up from, right? I rise up from a past that's rooted in pain. I rise, I'm a hot black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I will bear in the tide. Right? Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that, and you kind of notice, I rise bringing, it kind of feels like it just goes right into it. I rise bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. And then I rise, I rise, I rise. So just a little thing about the sound and the, sense of something where you get the feeling of the rising comes out of history's shame, which is slavery, of course. And the rising comes out of the togetherness of Black individuals in America, in particular, the Black Ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, right? Leaving behind nights of terror and kind of leaving that behind, I rise into a daybreak, right? And so she's using, this is where poetry is really poetry. And Maya Angelou knows her craft very well. But in terms of the theme and why I wasn't sure of the theme of Tupac's Still I Rise, but it's obviously similar, of the idea of rising out of the difficulties. Tupac is much more autobiographical. It seems like he's much more focused on, the actual events of his life, his father being in the ghetto, being shot at, being possibly killed in certain situations. Here, Maya Angelou situates herself more in history and putting it on a broader scale. And you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Right? So no matter what you do to me, I'm going to rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Right? And so she's asking these questions, rhetorical questions, in order to understand or to kind of push back against, right? It's like I'm sassy and someone tells her you're sassy and she's like, does my sassiness upset you? Well, too bad, right? Why are you beset with gloom? And then I love these little phrases she has, because I walk like I've got oil wells, right? I walk with wealth pumping in my living room, even though she doesn't, right? Just like moons and like suns. So she doesn't have the wealth, but she acts that way. She has the haughtiness, the pride, the love of self that is required to that kind of confidence in order to succeed and enjoy the life despite the difficulties and the pain. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed Still I Rise. I've definitely, these 3 poems. So the first poem I read was Life Through My Eyes, which I've enjoyed the most so far of the poems in the book. And this song, which I also enjoyed, although it's very complicated. So I don't know that I understand it yet. Thank you, and give me some more recommendations. Check out troubadourmag.com. Expose yourself to all kinds. If you're somebody who listens to a lot of rap and that's why you came to this reaction video, well, just like me, I don't listen, to a lot of rap until now. I recommend you go listen to some classic English poetry, and I do a lot of that. Listen to some Wordsworth, listen to some Blake, some Keats. There's a lot of great things that we can learn from all different types of cultures. Listen to French literature and Spanish literature, and like that's part of what literature offers. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, I don't know if Maya Angelou influenced Tupac Shakur. I bet she did. But I don't know. But the Still I Rise doesn't seem like too much of a coincidence. Seems like too much of a coincidence. But Maya Angelou has a poem called and the I know why the caged bird sings, which is actually based on a line from a freed slave, or a man who was born right around the time of the freeing of the slaves in 1865. I can't remember his first name, but it's Dunbar. And he has a poem, and in that poem, he says, "I know why the caged bird sings," and that is what inspired Maya Angelou, writing in the 1960s. So she's over 100 years removed from slavery, and she's writing about her own things. And so, this is what literature does. Maya Angelou, understood the challenges of being, this a black woman in America at a particular time when there wasn't slavery, but there was other problems of race relations and living in America as a black woman. She could never really, if we're being honest, she could never really understand what it's like to be a slave. But Dunbar could, because he's coming right at that time. And so she can get a feeling for what it's like to be a slave through his song, through his poetry. Just like I will never know what it's like to be a black woman in the 1960s, looked at and seen and talked to in a certain way. But I can read her poetry and get a taste and a sense of it. And that is so valuable, because if we don't do that, same thing with Tupac's poetry. If we don't do that, especially in today's day and age with BLM and all the riots and all the protests and all the things going on, and I'm not going to say my opinions because you won't like it, but if we don't do, you probably won't like it. We don't do the work to understand where everybody's coming from and to build a real melting pot again, and think about how to make that actually real for all of us, then it's not going to work. And it's going to be torn down at some point, probably in our lifetimes. Probably, I'm only 35, probably in the next 40, 50 years, it's going to get real. And it's not good. We don't want that. You do not want that. I don't want that. Okay, so let's save the world by reading poetry.